and I decided, I know I should make another stand. Baby dog, baby dog.
So what color do you think your eyes are?
Brown.
Dakota Levi Stevens was born on October 21, 2013, in Munster, Indiana. Unfortunately, in 2018, his parents lost custody of him and his younger sister due to their struggles with drug addiction, and they were subsequently placed in foster care. By the age of 10, Dakota was living with a new foster family in Valparaiso, Indiana. The family consisted of 48-year-old Jennifer Wilson, her husband, and 3 other children they adopted. Unfortunately, this living situation was far from ideal for Dakota, who was said to have verbal and physical aggression issues. On April 25, 2024, Jennifer claimed he woke up in a bad mood and refused to do his chores. So when she let the other kids go outside, he wasn't allowed. She said that he was now even more upset, and unbeknownst to her, he walked to a neighbor's house. The neighbor would later tell investigators that Dakota asked her to adopt him because his foster parents hit him in the face and wouldn't let him call the caseworker. However, the neighbor never saw any signs of injuries. When Jennifer realized he was gone, she went looking for him and found him talking to the neighbor. However, when she pulled up and asked him to get inside, he refused. The neighbor told Jennifer that Dakota wanted her to call the police, but Jennifer told her to mind her own business. Eventually, he got in the car, but he refused to get out once they arrived home. She then opened his door, but he began screaming, telling her he was leaving. He then got out of the car and started to walk away before being tackled by Jennifer, who claimed she was simply trying to hold him. However, Jennifer was 340 pounds, laying on Dakota, who only weighed 91 pounds, and it eventually caused him to pass out. When she got off of him, she claims she thought he was just faking it, but soon realized he wasn't breathing. After calling 911, an officer arrived and began performing CPR. He also noticed that Dakota had multiple bruises on his lower neck and chest. He was quickly airlifted to the Porter Memorial Hospital, where doctors discovered severe swelling to the brain due to a lack of oxygen caused by Jennifer laying on him. 2 days later, he was taken off life support and pronounced dead. The entire incident was caught on her Ring camera, and the footage showed her lying across his neck and chest area as he was screaming for help. After a few minutes, he went silent, and she could be heard screaming his name multiple times. She was then heard asking the other kids to call 911. On July 13, 2024, 3 months after his murder, Jennifer was arrested and charged with reckless homicide. If Jennifer is convicted, she could face up to 6 years in prison. Dakota's family had spent the last few years trying to get custody of him in order to get him out of the foster care system, but had been sadly unsuccessful. Kenneth White was born on August 22, 2009, to parents Jason and Christine White and went by Kenny. At some point, Jason and Christine lost custody of the children due to the horrible conditions at their home. Kenny and his 2 sisters were then sent to live with their Aunt Brenda Van Alstyne and their 19-year-old cousin Tiffany in a trailer in Knox, New York. 18-year-old Brandon Rios also lived there, along with 10 cats and dogs. However, Brenda's home allegedly wasn't much better than their parents'. In 2014, 5-year-old Kenny was now a kindergartner at Bernie Knox Westerlo School, still living with Brenda when tragedy struck. On December 18th, Brenda, Tiffany, Brandon, and the 3 children went to a doctor's office and then to the Price Chopper Pharmacy to fill a prescription. They arrived back at the trailer at about 12:45 p.m., and Tiffany and the kids went inside while Brenda and Brandon went to drop off some gifts at the school. While gone, she received a call from Tiffany telling her that 2 masked men had abducted Kenny after they burst into the home and restrained her. They quickly called the police, and an Amber Alert was issued. By 9 p.m. that night, a search party that included a tracker dog had discovered Kenny's body in a culvert about 300 feet from the trailer. Investigators were then shocked to find shoe prints that led back to their home and matched the boots that Tiffany had been wearing that day. they immediately became suspicious of her kidnapping story, and with the multiple inconsistencies and the shoe prints, she was arrested the following day and charged with second-degree murder. When she was brought in for an interrogation, she admitted to lying about the abduction. She said that she was helping him with his homework, but he kept giving her wrong answers. She claims she got so mad that she blacked out, and when she came to, she was strangling him. She then locked the girls in their room, took him outside, walked across the street, and threw his body over a guardrail and into a drainage ditch. Once there, she covered him with snow. Even more shocking was that she claimed she heard him let out a cry, but she did nothing to help him. Come to find out, she had a history of mental health issues and hadn't taken her medication on the day she was left alone with the children. An autopsy confirmed that Kenny had been strangled and beaten to death. Tiffany would later say she regretted her actions and decided to plead guilty to second-degree murder, and in the end, she was given 18 years in prison. It was then learned that Kenny's two sisters had also been physically abused in the home by both Brenda and Tiffany. It was so bad at times that they begged their biological mother, Christine, not to make them go back to the trailer. Since the incident, the girls, ages 5 and 6, are now in the custody of their great-aunt, Michelle Sweet. Even though the case of Kenny's murder has been settled, many in the community feel that Brenda should also be held accountable. But as of July 2024, she has never been charged and likely never will. Patricia Ann Boyanowski Haverly was born in Towanda, Pennsylvania on April 8, 1958, to parents John and Ruby and went by Patty. In 2018, 60-year-old Patty was living in Wyalusing, Pennsylvania, and was the mother of a 38-year-old son named Matthew Haverly, who had moved in with her 2 years ago after returning from California. Unfortunately, Matthew was far from the perfect son, and the two fought constantly. He was also known for his heavy drinking. On May 31, 2018, a passerby found a woman's body in Wyalusing Creek across the street from Patty's home. The person was able to flag down a UPS driver, and together they pulled the body out of the creek. When state troopers arrived, they found a large piece of black tarp and a woman's shoe about 100 yards downstream from where the body was found. The other shoe was later found on top of the creek embankment. Investigators determined that the body had been wrapped in the black tarp at one point. The case then took an interesting turn when the local news interviewed Matthew at his house about the body that was discovered. He seemed surprised but never mentioned anything about his missing mother. Here's a clip of that interview.
Sad to say that that's someone's either daughter, mother, whatever, both, child. I think it was kind of a hit and something happened. Something went bad, and this is like a rural area, so they just wanted to plant the body somewhere else besides wherever the hell they were from. It'd be like a place where people from the city would want to put a body because most likely they wouldn't be found. I'm guessing like my mother, she would be concerned, and probably a lot of the other neighbors would be.
That same day, Patty's daughter called the police and told them she thought she knew who the body belonged to. With her help, they were able to identify the woman as Patty. The medical examiner determined that she had bruises on her head and on the outer bicep of each arm that were consistent with being grabbed by someone. She also had defensive wounds on her arms and elbow. While they couldn't determine an official cause of death, they concluded she was in a weakened state because of her physical health and intoxication, and she possibly died as a result of those bruises. However, her cause of death was listed as inconclusive. Matthew was then brought in for an interview and claimed he hadn't seen his mother since Thursday night. He said that on the day she went missing, he arrived home after running some errands and drinking. He and his mother then got into another argument, so she followed him into his bedroom and tried to punch him in the face before he finally grabbed her by the arms and pushed her away. At that point, he claimed he blacked out from the drinking and said he didn't remember anything after that. However, he said it's possible that he hit her in the head when he was blocking her punches. He said when he woke up Friday, she was gone, along with her cell phone. Meanwhile, investigators found a wheelbarrow and black tarp inside a shed on their property that matched the one found in the creek. Inside the home, they found multiple damaged doors, which looked to them like a fight had occurred. They also discovered that Matthew and Patty had purchased a large amount of alcohol at a local liquor store in the month leading up to her murder. Investigators didn't believe he was telling the whole truth and instead believed that tensions in the home had escalated to the point that a physical altercation broke out, which left her dead. He then wrapped her body in the black tarp and dumped her in the creek across the street. A few hours after his interview, he was arrested and charged with a first-degree felony count of criminal homicide and a second-degree misdemeanor count of abuse of a corpse. In the end, Matthew pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 3.5 to 14 years in prison. His charges were also reduced to involuntary manslaughter, possessing a prohibited offensive weapon, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. In 2021, he appealed on the grounds that his lawyer never told him about the inconclusive cause of death, but it was denied. He has since been released on parole. Rebecca Sue Bletsch was born in Michigan on November 23, 1977, to parents Nick and Deborah Winberg, and went by Becky. She was described as a very social individual who was always the life of the party. She went on to coach the Reiths Puffer Middle School girls basketball team and worked as an assistant occupational therapist. On October 24, 2009, 31-year-old Becky married Kevin Bletsch, and they lived together in Muskegon, Michigan, with their 6-year-old daughter Ellie. During the summer of 2014, as they were getting ready for the 4th of July holiday, a horrible tragedy would occur. On June 29th, Kevin and Ellie left town to do maintenance on their vacation cabin because they had plans to spend the upcoming holiday there. Becky, on the other hand, stayed behind and went for her daily run, sadly never to be seen alive again. At about 6 p.m., less than a mile from her home, a couple driving by found her body. They quickly called 911 and began performing CPR, thinking she was the victim of a hit and run. However, when police arrived, they determined she had actually been shot, and all her items, including her sunglasses, earbuds, and armband used to hold her cell phone, were found neatly piled by the side of the road. Investigators determined, based on the proximity of the shell casings, that the first shot caused her to fall to the ground. The suspect then walked closer and shot her 2 additional times. They ruled out robbery because none of her valuables were taken. As for the suspect, investigators were baffled because they had no witnesses and her cell phone records never pointed to anything suspicious. They would later learn that her murder was connected to the disappearance of 25-year-old Jessica Herringa, who went missing on April 26, 2013. Jessica was a single mother working at an Exxon gas station about 20 minutes from where Becky was murdered. On the night she disappeared, she was about to close up the store when someone abducted her. Investigators found a bloodstain on the ground outside, along with a handgun laser sight and some tiny batteries. Surveillance footage at the gas station captured the abductor's vehicle, a silver Chrysler Town & Country minivan. However, it would still be another 3 years before the suspect was caught. On April 16, 2016, 2 years after Becky's murder, 16-year-old Madison Nygaard became one of his victims after she climbed into his silver minivan. She had been walking around, trying to find her way home after a night of partying when she got lost. That's when the suspect pulled up and offered to let her use his phone, but once inside, he told her it didn't work, pulled a gun on her, and began driving in a different direction. Thankfully, she made the smart decision to jump out and began running down West River Road. After escaping, she went to the police, and they, in turn, posted signs in the area where she was picked up, hoping someone knew who owned the van or had at least seen it. Plus, it matched the minivan from the Exxon in Jessica's case. Investigators also went to the site where Madison jumped out and found bullets that matched the bullets recovered from Becky's body. They then decided to check at a nearby blueberry farm and discovered they had surveillance cameras that would blow the case wide open. Their cameras had actually caught the suspect's van, and it was good enough quality that they were able to isolate an image of it. From there, they were led to a married man by the name of Jeffrey Thomas Willis. On May 17, 2016, around 30 days after Madison's attempted kidnapping, 46-year-old Willis was arrested. When they searched his van, they found a handgun that they determined to be the murder weapon used on Becky and items that could be used in sexual assaults, such as handcuffs, chains, ball gag, and diabetic syringes. There were also photos of females that were chained and bound. Upon searching his home, they found that he was keeping track of his victims on his computer by creating folders with their initials. Inside Becky's folder, they found a wanted poster, a news story about her death, and a photo of a woman who resembled Becky wearing a bikini and lying on a bed. There were also multiple videos of women being bound, taped, and gagged. They also discovered multiple images involving minors and a hidden camera in his bathroom that investigators suspect he was using to capture images of unsuspecting females. Just as shocking was the fact that Willis's cousin, Kevin Bloom, had seen him with a naked woman's body who he believed was Jessica. He said she was definitely dead and had been tied up, and a video camera was sitting nearby. It turns out he knew about Willis's crimes and never went to the police. He then took investigators to where he thought Jessica's body was buried, but apparently Willis had moved it. Bloom was never charged in connection to the murders, but was charged with lying to investigators, obstruction, and accessory after the fact. He eventually pleaded no contest to accessory after the fact and served a total of 476 days in jail. Police even had Willis's name because he had been accused of stalking women in parking lots. In 1999, he was fired from his custodian job at Fruitport School after he viewed an adult-only site on a school computer and a student later accessed it. He worked a few jobs over the years as a machine operator, industrial worker, and butcher before finally getting a job at Herman Miller Furniture Manufacturing Facility, where he would spend the next 18 years until his arrest in 2016. Willis is also a suspect in the murder of 15-year-old Angela Marie Thornburg, who disappeared on September 20th, 1996, and her body was found a few weeks later on October 17th. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison for Becky's murder and received another life sentence for Jessica's murder. Sadly, as of July 2024, Jessica's remains have never been found. Stacey Lee Mitchell was born in Dorset, England on June 17, 1990, to parents Andrew and Sophie. In 2001, 10-year-old Stacey and her family relocated to Perth, Western Australia, where she quickly made friends due to her very outgoing personality. However, she also loved to party, and on December 7, 2006, 16-year-old Stacey got into an argument with her parents and decided to run away. After leaving her home in the Atwell neighborhood, she went directly to the home of 19-year-old Jessica Stasinowski and her 18-year-old girlfriend, Valerie Parashumpty, 30 minutes away in the Lath Lane neighborhood. They lived there with the landlord's son, David Ross Haynes. They agreed to let her crash, but within a few days, Jessica became annoyed that she was walking around in her underwear and felt that she was flirting with Valerie. Unfortunately, Jessica's obsession with Valerie would lead to a horrible tragedy. 6 days later, on December 13th, when Stacey's parents had not heard from her, they reported her missing. 8 days later, investigators arrived at Jessica and Valerie's home, and upon searching a shed in the backyard, they shockingly found her remains. That's when they uncovered the craziest murder plot they'd ever heard of. It turns out that not only was Jessica obsessed with Valerie and was easy to make jealous, but Valerie was also obsessed with proving her love for Jessica. So when she expressed her jealousy over Stacey and Valerie's friendship, which she perceived as flirting, Valerie decided they should murder Stacey to prove her love for Jessica. They first poured oil on the bathroom floor, hoping she would fall and hit her head. When that didn't work, they crushed up glass and put it in her drink, but that also failed. Then, on December 17th, all three women were at home drinking when Haynes walked to his bedroom and turned up the music. That's when Valerie crept up behind her and hit her over the head with a large slab of concrete. Jessica then strangled her to death with a dog chain. The two then recorded Stacey as she lay there dying. Once she was dead, the two kissed over her body. They continued filming the bloody scene and even mocked Stacey's British accent as she lay dead in the background. They then gave Haynes, who was having a panic attack due to the events that just occurred, a blindfold so he could leave the house without seeing the crime scene. After cleaning up the scene, they put the body in a trash can while they discussed different ways to dispose of her. A few days later, all three of them went to a Bunnings hardware store and bought a chainsaw and a shovel. After the girls were arrested, they appeared before a shocked judge as they began talking and giggling with one another. After being sent back to their cells, Jessica was attacked by a gang of 18 inmates and had to be moved into protective custody. Meanwhile, 27-year-old Haynes was also arrested after he admitted to investigators that he knew about the murder plot and even helped them brainstorm ideas on how to dispose of the body. He explained that he was concerned for his own safety after trying to talk them out of murdering Stacey, but they responded that if he tried again, they would hurt him. Valerie also told him, and I quote, "No one should destroy your happiness, and you should kill anyone who does." He responded by saying, and I quote, "That sounds like a good idea, but I can think of better people to kill than Stacey." However, there was no changing their minds, and even though he turned up his music, he could still hear Stacey screaming for help. For his involvement in the murder, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. As for Jessica and Valerie, they pleaded guilty in November of 2007 and were sentenced to life in prison. It was later learned that Valerie was a sexually motivated sadist who even drank blood as part of a vampire cult. She was basically obsessed with the vampire subculture and had been drinking people's blood since she was 10 years old. She also tried to escape from prison at one point and had to be separated from Jessica by being sent to another facility. As of July 2024, neither girl has ever shown any remorse for their actions and could be released as early as 2031.